Hi, my name is Kaelen, and 2 years ago, the people who raised me decided my life wasn't worth keeping. While I laid in a hospital bed, paralyzed and fighting to breathe, my parents were already planning where to dump me and how to erase me. They told the world I was unstable, a burden, someone better forgotten. But what hurts isn't the wheelchair. What hurts is knowing your own family can smile at breakfast while packing your life into boxes behind your back. And the day my father spat at me in that bank and told me to leave, he had no idea the truth I was about to put in his hands. If you want to know how a son they tried to throw away ended up holding $67 million, stay with me. Because this story doesn't start with vengeance, it starts with being abandoned. I didn't understand where I was at first. The ceiling above me looked unfamiliar, washed in a pale hospital glow that made everything feel distant, like I'd woken inside someone else's life. It took a moment before my mind caught up with my body, before I remembered the crash and the weightless second when the world twisted out from under me. When I finally tried to move, nothing below my waist answered. The numbness wasn't just physical. Something inside me felt hollowed out. A nurse came in with a soft knock, adjusting the monitors beside my bed, speaking in a tone meant to be soothing. I kept glancing toward the door, expecting to hear my family's voices, maybe even see my father's shadow before he stepped inside. But she was the only one who came for the next few minutes. I stared at the blankets over my legs, willing a spark of sensation to return. Nothing. When my father finally walked in, it wasn't the way I imagined a parent would greet a son after hearing he could no longer walk. He didn't rush to my side. He didn't put a hand on my shoulder. He didn't even sit. He carried a clipboard, shuffled through pages, and asked the nurse where he needed to sign. He barely glanced at me. His voice had that flat, professional tone he used at work, like this was just another set of papers to process. I waited for his eyes to lift and meet mine. They didn't. As the nurse gathered my few belongings, a small key slipped out of a plastic bag. It hit the floor with a quiet tap. My mother, Ilara, picked it up and slipped it into her purse before I could reach for it. She didn't say why. She didn't look at me either, just closed her purse and stood by the door. The ride home felt longer than the hospital stay. Houston traffic crawled outside the windows, but inside the car, the silence was heavier than the air. My brother, Marston, stayed absorbed in his phone, tapping and scrolling like he couldn't be bothered to glance up. My mother looked straight ahead, hands clasped tightly in her lap. My father drove without saying a word. I could hear the turn signal better than I could hear the sound of anyone breathing. I tried asking about physical therapy programs, what the doctors mentioned, what steps we would take next, whether I'd need in-home care or outpatient rehab. No one answered. Not a single acknowledgement. It was as if my voice came from another radio station they weren't tuned to. When we reached the house, they helped me in, but only to the living room, as though stopping any farther might imply commitment. My father cleared his throat and said we needed to talk as a family, though the way he positioned himself made it feel more like I was about to be reviewed. They stood while I sat in my chair, the angle making me feel smaller than I'd ever felt in my own home. That's when the first blow landed. My father said they weren't prepared for a situation like this. He said it the same way he talked about unexpected expenses, measured, detached, almost annoyed. He explained that long-term support would be too much, and that they had to be realistic. There was no softness in his tone, only discomfort and something colder I didn't want to name. Then he added that they discussed it earlier, without me, of course. Marston didn't hesitate. "It's what makes sense," he muttered, still not looking at me. My mother whispered, "We don't want to see you struggle here," as if pushing me away would somehow spare them from the responsibility of watching. Then came their decision. They wanted me to move out, soon. They framed it like a vote, like they were handling this fairly. I sat there, gripping the sides of my wheelchair until my hands ached. I asked the only question I could manage. "Is that really how little I mean to you?" No one replied. My father looked at the floor. My mother dabbed at her eyes without a tear. Marston pulled out his phone again. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just turned my chair and rolled down the hallway to my old room, the one that used to hold pieces of who I was before the accident and before this new kind of hurt. Everything looked the same, but none of it felt like it belonged to me anymore. The posters, the worn dresser, the bedspread I'd had since college breaks. They felt like reminders of someone I wasn't allowed to be now. I pressed my hand against the wooden frame of the bed and let the truth sink in. They didn't want me here. Not because they couldn't handle my condition, because they didn't want the burden attached to it. It was easier to push me out than face what my life had become. As night crept in, rain began tapping softly against the window. The same sound from the night of the crash. I lay back, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything pressing in at once. "Maybe this is the day I lose my family for good," I whispered, though a part of me knew the process had started long before today. Tomorrow arrived sooner than I wanted, and with it came the moment my family finally pushed me out completely. I woke to the smell of bacon. Real bacon, not the frozen kind my mom reheated when she was in a rush. For a second, I thought maybe things had shifted. Maybe yesterday had scared them enough to reconsider. But hope is a dangerous thing to wake up with. It lasted about 3 seconds. From my room, I could hear clinks of silverware being arranged too neatly. The kind of overcompensation people use when they don't know how to apologize. I rolled toward the kitchen slowly, trying not to expect anything, but already bracing myself. My mother greeted me with a too-wide smile. "Kaelen, honey, we made your favorite. Eggs over medium, blueberry toast." My father stood at the far end of the kitchen, sipping coffee with the same stern posture he used during boardroom presentations. Marston leaned against the counter, making some loud joke about a neighbor's broken fence. None of them looked like they were about to acknowledge the gut punch from the night before. My mother pulled out a chair at the head of the table and nodded toward it. "Sit here today. You deserve it." I hesitated, then rolled forward and parked beside it, reaching for my utensils. Something about this all felt rehearsed. Their tone, their timing. It was like I was being eased into something they'd already decided behind my back. "Feeling better this morning?" my father asked in a voice that didn't care either way. I nodded slowly, eyeing him. "Still paralyzed, if that's what you're asking." He chuckled politely, then added, "We've been thinking about your next steps. You know, now that you're home." Marston chimed in, mouth half full. "Yeah, man, it's like a fresh start, right? We all just want what's best for you." I looked at him carefully. "You mean best for me or best for you?" That's when it started. My father set his fork down carefully. "We all agreed you deserve independence. It's important." My jaw tightened. Independence from what? Marston leaned in, still smirking like this was some game. "We don't want you to think we're kicking you out. We just know you'll do better somewhere else." I tried to laugh, but nothing came out. Where exactly is somewhere else? They exchanged glances. No answers. Because there weren't any. They hadn't planned for what I needed. They'd only planned for how to get rid of me. I sat there for a moment, fork still in hand, before trying one last time. I don't have a job. I can't even get to the mailbox without help. My bank account's nearly empty, and I don't qualify for disability yet. Where do you expect me to go? My father took a slow sip of coffee, then placed the mug down with that calculated pause of his. You're young. You'll figure it out. Marston laughed again, louder this time. Just don't expect us to babysit. You're not the only one with problems. My mother avoided my eyes, dabbing her mouth like she was watching a soap opera and not her son being forced out of the only home he had. The rest of breakfast was quiet, except for the clinking of plates and occasional forced laughs from Marston, trying too hard to act like this was all normal. Afterward, my mom touched my shoulder lightly and asked, "Can you come down the hallway for a minute?" I followed her, my wheels humming over the wood floor. She stopped in front of my bedroom and opened the door. Everything was gone. The bed was stripped. The bookshelves were empty. My posters, my photos, even my old high school trophies. They were all packed away into neat plastic storage bins, labeled in bold black marker. A vacuum cleaner sat where my desk used to be. She stood beside me, whispering like this was some kind of kindness. We thought it'd be easier for you this way. You don't need to worry about packing. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, like it was holding back something raw and sharp. I rolled inside, staring at the bins like they belonged to someone who had died. They hadn't waited. They'd started boxing me up before I even left the hospital, like I'd already been erased and they just needed the body to catch up. My mother stood awkwardly near the doorway. We saved your essentials on top. I nodded slowly. This wasn't for me. It was for you. So you wouldn't have to face what you were doing. She flinched at that just for a second before stepping back into the hallway. I sat there for a long time, staring at my room, my former room. The carpet still had the worn line from where my desk chair used to roll. One of my jackets was left behind on a hook by mistake. I reached for it and pulled it into my lap, holding it close like it might help me breathe. That's when something shifted inside me. Not the kind of shift that comes with giving up, but the kind that signals something deeper is changing. If I stayed, they would break what was left of me. They were trying to mold me into a story they could live with. But I wasn't going to give them that. I began checking the bins, pulling out the basics, a few clothes, my wallet, some toiletries. I didn't know where I'd go next, but I knew I couldn't stay here. As I reached for the last box, I noticed something on my shelf. The house key. The same one my mother had taken yesterday. It was back, and beside it, a small folded note. The note was only 4 words, but those words changed everything. They chose this already. Ilara's handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp, slanted letters like she always used when she was nervous. My hands trembled as I unfolded the scrap of paper again, reading it over and over. My chest felt tight, like my ribs were locking around my lungs. Already? Before I even got home? Before I even understood the extent of my injury? I turned toward the bins they had packed for me, my pulse rising. My fingers dug through layers of clothes and books until I found a manila folder jammed under a pair of sweatpants. It was thick and bent in one corner. I pulled it out slowly, almost afraid of what I'd see inside. The front of the folder read, Maple Glen Recovery Center. A photo of the building was paper clipped to the front, A gray, aging facility with a cracked driveway and one lopsided bush. I flipped the folder open. Inside were 3 brochures with smiling seniors, staged photos of nurses helping patients with crossword puzzles, and fake testimonials. But that wasn't what stopped me. The documents behind them were dated 2 weeks ago, 2 full weeks before I was even discharged from the hospital. Trembling now, I kept flipping. There it was. A transportation request form signed by my father. Initials from my mother. A note scrawled in the margin in my father's pen. Move him as soon as possible. Not Kaelen. Not our son. Just him. I don't know what broke more. My heart or my belief that this was still my family. I took a few deep breaths, closed the folder, and rolled back toward the living room. My father was standing near the fireplace, arms folded. My mother sat at the edge of the couch, fiddling with her phone. Marston was nowhere to be seen, which made my stomach churn even more. "I found the paperwork," I said, loud enough to make them look up. Neither of them moved. "I know about Maple Glen," I added. My father sighed, as if I'd just brought up something inconvenient. "There's no point dragging this out. It's arranged." My voice cracked. "I'm still your son." My mother didn't meet my eyes. "We did what we had to do, Kaelen. It's a good place." I held up the form. "You wrote, 'move him,' like I'm cargo." My father shrugged. "It's just language. Don't read into it." My chest burned, but I stayed calm. "You made this decision without me, without even knowing if I'd need it. You're not in a position to make that kind of call," he said coldly. I opened the folder again, noticing a second form tucked behind the others. This one was different. It was a temporary guardianship release. My name typed at the top. The facility's name listed as the authority to act in my interest, in the event the patient is mentally unfit or unable to make decisions for himself. Signed by Marston. "Are you kidding me?" I snapped, voice rising. "He gave them legal authority. Over me?" My mother's voice was barely a whisper. "We thought it would help things move smoother." Marston walked in just then, holding a granola bar like he had no part in any of this. "It's not permanent, just temporary to get you settled. Don't make a big deal." I stared at him. "You signed away my rights." He didn't flinch. "You weren't exactly making moves on your own, bro." There was a knock at the front door. My father didn't even look surprised. He opened it and stepped aside. A uniformed man stood there next to a white van with the Maple Glen logo on the side. "They're here," my father said simply. My mother stood up, smoothed her blouse, and muttered, "It's for the best." I didn't remember much of being wheeled out the door, just flashes. The sun was too bright. The neighbors across the street were outside, pretending not to watch. My mother didn't hug me. Marston didn't even say goodbye. My father leaned down just enough to speak near my ear. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but I didn't. I let them roll me into the van, and I sat in silence as the door closed behind me. The engine rumbled, the wheels turned, and just like that, I was gone. The drive was long. I stared out the window as Houston blurred past. Familiar streets turned into unfamiliar roads. I passed a bakery I used to visit as a kid, a playground where I once broke my arm. I watched it all slip away like a life I was being erased from. I thought about being 8, sitting on my dad's shoulders during the 4th of July parade, believing that no matter what, he'd protect me. Now he couldn't even say goodbye without sounding like it was a chore, Maple Glen sat on the edge of the city, tucked behind a gas station and a row of weed-choked hedges. The parking lot was cracked. The building was older than the pictures suggested. A nurse met us outside and barely made eye contact as she helped me out of the van. No one spoke much as I was wheeled through dim hallways lined with beige wallpaper. A man down the hall coughed nonstop. Another sat slumped in a wheelchair, eyes unfocused. My room was small, with a thin mattress and a single metal drawer. There was a clock on the wall, its second hand ticking far too loudly. The nurse handed me a clipboard with intake forms, mumbled something about dinner being at 5, and left. I sat there for a long time, staring at the walls. No family photos, no books, no warmth. Just silence and that damn ticking clock. I lay back on the mattress, still dressed, my mind racing. I could hear the muffled sound of a TV down the hall, someone shouting a name I didn't recognize. I whispered to the ceiling, "If they want me forgotten, then maybe that's where my story begins." A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Then a voice. "Kaelen." I froze. I knew that voice. Link to next chapter. When I turned to the door, the person standing there changed the direction of everything that came next. When I turned toward the door, I expected a nurse, or maybe someone from the admin office. Not her. "Ilara?" I said, not quite believing it. She stepped into the room quietly, her brown curls tucked back in a loose braid, a canvas tote slung over her shoulder. She was dressed in jeans and a cardigan, casual, not clinical, but her presence still radiated the same calm energy she had back at the hospital. "I hope it's okay I came," she said. "I had to find you." For the first time since that van door shut behind me, I felt warmth begin to crawl back into my chest. "Yeah," I said, voice dry, raw. "It's more than okay." She gave a soft smile, but didn't sit right away. Her eyes scanned the bare room. Cracked tiles, faded curtains, a wheelchair parked near the foot of the bed like an afterthought. She didn't say it out loud, but I could see it in her face. "This is not where you belong. How did you even find me?" She finally sat, pulling the tote onto her lap. "It wasn't hard. I still had your file number from the hospital, and I wanted to talk to you before it's too late." I blinked. "Too late for what?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Your family had me fired." The words sat between us like a dropped weight. "What?" "They said I was overstepping, that I got too involved." She looked down at her hands. "But it wasn't just that. Your dad told the board I was interfering with their family's long-term care plan. He said you weren't going to be their responsibility for much longer." I sat back, stunned. Hearing it from her, so plainly, stripped away whatever slivers of denial I'd been clinging to. "They didn't just give up on me," I said. "They made sure no one else could care, either." She nodded. "I thought you deserved to know." We sat in silence for a moment. The hallway outside buzzed with distant voices, but in that room, everything felt still. Ilara eventually stood. "Can we go outside? There's a courtyard." We moved slowly, me pushing myself down the uneven hallway while she walked beside me. The courtyard wasn't much, just a cracked stone path and a bench under a struggling magnolia tree. But the sunlight felt like a blessing. She waited until we were seated before reaching into her tote. "I brought something else," she said, her voice low. "Something I probably shouldn't have." She handed me a folder, thinner than the one I'd found in my bins, but somehow heavier in meaning. "What is it?" "It's from your dad's office," she said. I grabbed it before they escorted me out. I opened it carefully, Inside were scanned copies of legal documents, letters from their attorney, and the headline on one form stopped me cold. Petition for medical incompetence designation? Kaelen Royce, I kept reading. They had filed to have me legally declared unable to manage my own finances. They listed my spinal injury. They cited emotional instability, ongoing physical impairment, and unreliable decision-making. Marston was named as the proposed guardian. Ilara's voice was barely above a whisper. They tried to take everything. They still might, I said, eyes glued to the last page. If this goes through, I can't even access my own checking account. Her hand brushed my arm, grounding me. That's why I came. So you'd know. So you could fight it. I looked up at her. I can't walk. I don't have a lawyer. I don't even have a permanent address. Then we'll figure that out, she said. Together. I felt something shift deep inside me. Not panic, not grief. Something sharper, cleaner, clarity. They're hiding something, I said. You don't fight this hard for control unless there's something behind the curtain. Ilara didn't speak, but I saw the agreement in her eyes. I looked around the courtyard, this place they'd chosen to forget me in, and felt a quiet vow forming inside me. I'm not done, I whispered, not even close. Later, as she stood to leave, she paused at the door and looked back. I'll start researching lawyers who specialize in medical guardianship abuse. I nodded. And I'll start asking questions they never wanted me to. She smiled and slipped out, leaving the door slightly ajar. A few minutes passed before I noticed the shadow. A man in a pressed polo stepped into view, facility management. His ID tag flashed briefly in the afternoon light. Mr. Royce, he said. Yes? I've been asked to inform you. Your family called. They've requested we accelerate your transfer to a long-term facility. I froze. The words hit like a warning bell. They were moving faster now. Too fast. That single sentence made it clear I was running out of time. The manager's footsteps had barely faded down the hall when I felt the walls shift. Not physically, but in the way a room changes once you know you're not just a guest, you're a target. My hands rested motionless on the arms of the chair, but inside, my mind spun like wheels on ice. Outside, the sky had darkened. The soft tick of raindrops on the window began, faint at first, then building into a steady patter. It was the same rhythm I remembered from the hospital the night I found out I'd never walk again. Only this time, I wasn't scared of my body failing. I was scared of everyone else trying to make sure I stayed powerless. I wheeled myself out into the hallway to find the manager again before I lost my nerve. Can I ask, who called? What did they say exactly? I tried to keep my voice steady. He hesitated, glancing around before motioning for me to follow him into the empty break room. He kept his voice low. Off the record. Your family requested limited contact. Said they were concerned you might be emotionally unstable. We were instructed not to allow outside phone calls unless cleared by them directly. I stared at him. What? He shifted uncomfortably. I know it's not right. But I don't make the rules, Mr. Royce. They prepaid for 1 month. After that, well, we were told if you became non-compliant, they'd transfer you to a cheaper facility. I couldn't breathe for a moment. The walls didn't just feel tight, they felt like they were closing in. Back in my room, the storm outside began to swell, thunder rolling low over the trees like a warning. I sat in silence for a long time, hands gripping the wheels so hard my knuckles ached. It was like being underwater. Sound muted, pressure mounting. I whispered, how could they do this to their own son? But I already knew the answer. That question had echoed inside me since the day I woke up paralyzed and saw no one by my side. I'd pretended it was grief or denial, but now I saw it for what it really was: convenience. I was inconvenient, and they wanted me gone. The storm's rhythm turned irregular, harder, angrier, like it was reacting to the chaos inside me. I closed my eyes and let the memories return. I remembered being 12 and winning a school math competition only for my father to pat Marston on the back for cheering me on. I remembered being grounded for a week for accidentally breaking a lamp while Marston got a new phone after skipping school. They weren't subtle about their preferences. I just spent too many years believing I could earn my way into their affection if I was patient enough. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of the spiral. Calls were supposed to be blocked. That's what they told the facility. But this wasn't a call. It was a voicemail notification. The number was familiar. My father's office line. I played it. At first, silence. Then, some shuffling. A voice, his voice, muttering low, like he didn't realize the call had connected. We need him out of the picture before the financial audit. If he accesses anything, all of this falls apart. My heart stopped. Then another voice, my mother's, faint but unmistakable, whispered, "He won't fight back. He never does." The message ended. I sat there frozen, listening to nothing. Just the storm outside. That wasn't misinterpretation. That wasn't a bad choice of words. That was a plan. That was strategy. And I was the obstacle. They didn't just want me gone. They needed me powerless. Silenced. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry, not like before. Something deeper was happening. It wasn't despair. It was the beginning of clarity, like a curtain pulling back inside me. They were scared, not of me as I was, but of who I might become if I ever figured out the truth. That realization cracked something open. The tears came, not from weakness, but from release, from the years I spent trying to deserve their love, from the silence I swallowed every time they made me feel like less. I wiped my face and stared at the screen. "I don't know what you're hiding," I said softly, "but I'm going to find it." And that's when the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then they went out completely. The hallway darkened. My room disappeared into shadow. I waited, breath shallow. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Approaching slowly. Too slow to be staff in a rush. Too steady to be coincidence. A shadow moved just beyond the doorway, cast in dim flashes from the storm outside. I wasn't as alone as I thought. In the dark, a shadow approached my door, and I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the hallway in jagged white for a heartbeat. In that split second, I saw her. "Ilara?" I whispered, my voice hoarse from too much silence and not enough hope. She stepped into the sliver of emergency light leaking from the stairwell. Her hair was damp from the rain, her breath shallow. She looked around once before closing the door behind her. "Kaelen, you need to come with me, now." My hands gripped the arms of the chair. "What? What's going on?" "There's no time to explain it all here." Her voice was quick but careful. "After I left, I kept digging through what I copied from your father's office. I found something big, and if they find out I have it, I'm done. But you need to see it." Thunder cracked above us, a deep, growling sound that shook the windows. She moved toward me, then paused. "Can you move on your own?" I nodded. Slowly. We slipped out into the hallway. Most of the lights were dead, but the emergency glow strips at the baseboards gave off a dull orange trail. "Ilara, are you sure about this?" I asked as we turned the corner. "Coming back here, this late, in the middle of a blackout?" She didn't look back. "I could lose my job, maybe more, but I couldn't leave you here knowing what I know now." We reached a small supply room at the end of the corridor. Inside, it smelled like bleach and old paper. She shut the door softly behind us and pulled something from beneath her coat. A thick envelope. My name was printed across the front, bold and clear, and spelled correctly. That stopped me. "They always mess up my name," I murmured. She nodded. That's how I knew this wasn't a copy from the hospital records or any of the recent paperwork. This goes way back. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside were papers, financial documents, bank logos I didn't recognize. The first page said, "Trustee, Royce, Kaelen, beneficiary, Soul." I read it twice before the words sank in. "What is this?" "A dormant investment account," Ilara said softly. "Opened in your name when you were about 7. Funded with quarterly deposits until about 10 years ago. Then left untouched. But 2 weeks ago, someone tried to access it. Illegally." I stared at her. "Who?" "Marston, your brother." My chest tightened. Not from panic, but from a strange, cold calm that spread through me like steel replacing bone. "They tried to lock me out of my own money," I said slowly. "Told this facility I was unstable. Now I find out there's more I was never meant to know." She looked me in the eye. "This account may be the key to all of it. And if they're this desperate to hide it, it means they're afraid of what happens when you claim it." A long silence stretched between us. Only the muffled roar of the storm filled the gap. For the first time in days, my thoughts weren't spiraling. They were sharpening. If I could access that account, maybe everything would change. Outside, voices echoed faintly down the hallway. Facility staff calling out names, checking rooms, doing head counts in the blackout. "They're making rounds," Ilara said quickly. "If they find me in here, they'll call your parents. Maybe even law enforcement. We can't stay." My fingers brushed the edge of the envelope. She crouched beside my chair. "Kaelen, if you want to fight back, this is the moment. Right now." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Not as the nurse who'd once helped me bathe in a sterile hospital. Not as the only visitor who'd treated me like a person. But as the one person willing to risk everything when no one else would. I gave a slow nod. And in that moment, without realizing it, I stepped into the most dangerous confrontation of my life. Ilara didn't waste a second. She pushed my wheelchair faster than I thought possible, guiding us through a maze of dim maintenance corridors in the assisted living facility. Pipes dripped overhead. The hum of backup power buzzed faintly behind the walls, but the flickering lights above felt more like a countdown than a comfort. When we reached the rear service door, she paused. Rain battered the parking lot beyond, a gray curtain under the buzzing glow of a dying street lamp. "Ready?" she asked. I wasn't. Not for the rain, not for what came next, but I nodded anyway. She pushed the door open. The wind hit us sideways, slicing cold into my clothes. Still, the freedom in that storm felt better than any heat lamp ever could. Our ride-share car waited near the end of the lot, hazards blinking like a signal flare. We raced toward it, wheels bumping over uneven concrete. A bolt of lightning cracked overhead as we reached the vehicle, and the driver, a young man barely older than Marston, didn't say a word. He just looked at Ilara, who said, "Downtown. Wilson Law. Off Polk. Go." Please." The car surged forward. I sat in the back, soaked to the bone, heart pounding from the escape and from something worse. The silence. The knowledge that we were doing something that couldn't be undone. 10 minutes later, we pulled up in front of the attorney's office. It was dark. "Of course," Elara muttered. "Power's out here too." She got out first, holding her phone to the window to see if anyone would answer her texts. I stayed in the car, staring at the office sign through fogged glass. That's when I saw the headlights behind us. Bright. Too bright. They didn't move. "Elara," I said slowly. "That car wasn't behind us earlier, was it?" She looked over her shoulder. "Stay in the car." Before I could respond, the driver's side door behind us swung open hard. A shape appeared, soaked through, fury etched into every line of his face. Marston. "You think you can run?" he shouted, slamming the door behind him. "You think you can ruin everything we've built?" He marched around and gripped the back of my wheelchair through the car door, yanking it backward. My body jolted. "You're coming with me, now." Elara jumped between us. "Let go of him." But Marston shoved her, hard. She stumbled against the front fender, nearly losing her footing. "Touch her again," I said, voice low, shaking not from fear, but fury. "And I swear I'll scream loud enough for every office in this building to open their doors." He froze, shocked that I spoke with something sharper than apology. "You're unbelievable," he hissed. "You've embarrassed this family enough. You're lucky we even gave you a place to stay. And now you pull this?" "Pull what?" I barked. "Surviving? Finding out you all lied? Trying to exist without being strangled?" His eyes darted to Elara, then back to me. "You weren't supposed to see those documents," he snapped. "You were supposed to stay quiet until we fixed the mess you caused." "What mess?" I demanded. He took a step forward. "I had to tie up your identity. You think people wouldn't question why you had untouched accounts? Why someone like you suddenly had power? I attached your name to a few debts, just a few, to slow the trail." My throat tightened. "You forged debt under my name?" "No one would believe you anyway," he sneered. "You've got no job, no credibility, living in a care home. They'd believe me." I stared at him. This wasn't some brotherly spat. This was theft. Pre-planned. Calculated. He didn't just want me forgotten. He wanted me erased. "For years," I said, voice steadying, "you lived off everything handed to you. And still, that wasn't enough. You had to steal what little was mine, too." That stunned him. Not the words, but the way I said them. I wasn't cowering anymore. Elara quickly pulled out her phone and darted back toward the office building. "I'm calling security." Marston reached for me again, but I twisted away just as red and blue lights filled the parking lot. He paused. Rain poured down his face. His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you've started," he whispered. I didn't reply. I just looked him in the eye. Because this time, I wasn't scared of him anymore. That small shift inside me, almost invisible, carried me straight into the next collision I never asked for, but could no longer avoid. The police cruiser rolled to a stop, tires hissing on the wet pavement, lights flashing across the lot like a warning I felt in my bones. 2 officers stepped out, rain sliding off their jackets as they approached. Marston moved first. "Officers," he said, breathless but controlled. "Thank goodness you're here. My brother ran away from medical care. He's unstable. We're trying to get him somewhere safe." He turned his voice soft, worried, like he'd practiced it. The officers looked straight at me, then down at my wheelchair, and the shift in their eyes hurt more than his shove earlier. "Sir," one said quietly, "can you tell us what's going on?" I tried, I really did. I explained the forged paperwork, the attempted guardianship, the facility restrictions, the blackout, everything we'd uncovered. But the other officer cut in. "Your father already filed a report stating you're medically unfit to make decisions on your own." The words hit me like cold water. He had planned this, all of it. And for a moment, I felt the same old suffocating spiral closing in, people deciding who I was, what I believed, what I deserved, without ever asking me. Then the officer stepped closer, voice slow and coaxing. "Let's just get you somewhere safe, all right? We can take it from here." Safe, meaning back under their control, meaning back where I would disappear quietly. Before I could respond, Ilara moved between us. "No, he's not unstable. He's being financially targeted. And I have the documents to prove it." Her voice didn't shake once. She handed the sealed folder to the officers. They stepped aside beneath the awning near the law office entrance, flipping through the pages slowly. Their posture changed, shoulders tightening, brows narrowing, but not at me this time. Finally, one officer returned. "We can't force him back tonight. This needs to be reviewed." Marston's expression collapsed into something raw, something desperate he couldn't hide. Rain streaked across his face, but even the storm couldn't blur the panic setting into his eyes. "You have no idea what you're doing," he hissed, but the officers told him to leave the property and warned him they would file a report if he interfered again. As his car pulled away, Ilara exhaled hard, like she'd been holding the world up with one breath. "Let's go," she said. "We need to get somewhere safe before he tries something else." We climbed back into the ride share. The driver, wide-eyed, didn't ask a single question. The rest of the ride passed in tense silence until we reached her friend's apartment, a small upstairs unit glowing with warm lamps, so different from the storm outside, it felt almost unreal. Inside, she set her bag on the coffee table and pulled out the documents we hadn't yet reviewed. "All right," she said softly. "Let's see how deep this really goes." We opened the dormant investment account first. Small attempted transfers flagged in red, each rejected for lack of authorization. Someone, recently, had tried to drain it. I already knew who. But then we found something else buried deeper, a hidden trail leading to a secondary account linked to my name, one I had never heard of. When we opened the details, my breath stalled. This account wasn't small. It wasn't dormant. It wasn't forgotten. It was enormous. Investments made decades ago, long before I was old enough to understand money, had grown into something far beyond anything my parents ever told me. And every document stated the same thing. I was the sole legal beneficiary. My parents had spent years trying to gain access. They'd failed every time. That's why I was a threat now. That's why they tried to isolate me, silence me, discredit me. Not because I was a burden, because I was the one thing they couldn't control. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the numbers glowing on the screen. My heart didn't race this time. It steadied. "They pushed you out," Ilara said quietly, "because they knew you were the only one they couldn't manipulate." For the first time, I saw it clearly. Not the boy desperate for approval, not the patient trapped in a wheelchair, not the son they discarded. A man with leverage, a man with resources, a man they could no longer hide from. I whispered, almost to myself, "If they fear what I can uncover, tomorrow, they'll learn exactly why." The storm eased outside, leaving a faint rumble drifting through the night. Dawn wasn't far off, and at first light, I would roll through the doors of the bank where my father worked. Everything they'd buried was coming with me. The lobby was still quiet, that early hush before the day picks up. Polished marble stretched beneath my wheels, catching soft sunlight that slanted through the tall windows. Employees at their desks turned as I entered, some just curious, others with that too familiar expression of pity they didn't bother to hide. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. I kept my hands steady on the wheels, moving forward slowly, intentionally. I wasn't here to ask for anything. I was here to show what had always been mine. A young woman behind the teller counter greeted me. "Good morning. How can I help you?" I gave her a small nod and held out my ID. "I'd like to check my account balance, please." She smiled politely, took the card, and typed into her screen. Her smile slowly faded. Her fingers hesitated on the keyboard. Then she looked up at me again, no longer with polite detachment, but with something else. Respect, maybe, or awe. "I just need to call my supervisor," she said, her voice thinner now. That was when I saw him. Derek. My father stepped out from one of the private offices, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened slightly like he always did when trying to appear more approachable. The moment his eyes landed on me, the warmth vanished from his face. His jaw clenched. "What are you doing here?" he said sharply, marching toward me. "This isn't appropriate." I didn't answer. I just looked back at the teller. "Please continue," I said quietly. Derek's voice rose. "You're a disgrace. Get out before you embarrass yourself further." Now people were watching. Heads turned. A few whispered. The tension crackled like static. I didn't move. "Run the balance," I repeated, this time louder. The teller's supervisor stepped up behind her, glancing at the screen. His face paled. He hit a few more keys, then printed something from the machine beside him. The paper came out slow, like the truth dragging itself into the light. He handed it to me with both hands, fingers shaking slightly. I looked down at the figure. $67 million. Right there in black ink. Undeniable. Unstoppable. There was a silence you could feel. I looked up. My father stood frozen. His face lost all color, like the number had sucked the blood from his body. His mouth opened, but no words came. Then he dropped. Not in some theatrical collapse, but in a real, physical breakdown. His knees hit the polished floor. His hands trembled as he leaned toward me. "Kaelen, please. You don't understand. We were going to tell you. We just needed time." Time. That's what he wanted? I stared at him. The man who'd called me worthless, who locked me away, who erased my name in places it mattered. And now, begging. I should have felt vindicated. Maybe I did, somewhere deep. But mostly I felt clear, like a fog had finally lifted. "You threw me away," I said, voice calm but unshakable. "Not because I was weak, but because you couldn't control me. You thought I had nothing left, but you were wrong." He tried to reach for my hand. I turned to the teller instead. "Please remove all authorized family access. Permanently." She blinked, then nodded. "Of course." Derek's lips moved in desperation. "Son, don't do this. We're still family." I didn't look at him this time. "You lost the right to call me that." There wasn't another word, just the clicking of keys, as the teller removed every name tied to my account, every string they had left to pull. I turned the chair and rolled toward the exit. The glass doors opened with a soft whoosh, letting in the warmth of the rising sun. Outside, the city was coming to life. Cars, voices, the pulse of people moving on with their own stories. I took a breath. It felt clean. The weight of them was still there, somewhere in the background, but it no longer dictated my path. That wasn't victory. Not exactly. It was freedom. Not loud, not flashy. Just mine. The kind that comes when you stop waiting for someone to hand you your worth and take it back yourself. There was no going back to who I used to be. And for the first time, that felt like something to look forward to.